Hey, welcome back. Welcome back, Kingdom Builders, Road Trippers, Akeem and Akatim, brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, everybody. Welcome back to the road trip. Shalom and shalom, peace and blessings to you, your homes, your dwelling places, right? All that good stuff that you need in your life, Mishpachah. That's right, family and friends. Correct, right? Peace and blessings to your loved ones, your friends, your children, and your pets, right? Your fur babies. That's right. All praises to the Most High. Abana Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, right? All praises to Yahweh. Glory to Yahweh Shai. Honors to the Ruach. My love and my respect to you. All right? Cool. So what are you up to? How was your weekend? How was it? Or how is it? It's not over yet. But I hope everything's been going great. Really smooth for you. All right. You're chilling. So we're back here in the works of Josephus. We're still in the introduction. This right here is... This portion of the introduction is called a critique. So we're going to go ahead and read through that. And let's see, just doing a little quick scan. All right. It's not that long. So once we finish this up, this is not going to take very long. And then once we finish this, we're going to start the life of Flavius Josephus. Flavius Josephus, I guess you want to say. All right. And that's broken down into chapters, which is cool. So that's going to be kind of similar to what we're used to. All right. Cool. All right, let's finish this introduction. No further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the introduction of Josephus, the critique. Let's begin. The critique, and it reads, Josephus's accuracy and reliability as a historian have been challenged repeatedly. His free interpretation of his sources and his embellishments of the biblical record have already been cited. That he had a habit of overstating for dramatic purposes is also clear. The reader must discount such hyperboles as his claim, for example, that so much blood was shed in Jerusalem during its conquest that streams of gore extinguished the fires burning there. Like most ancient historians, Josephus also had trouble with numbers, uncritically accepting and then transmitting augmented statistics as to population and distance sizes and number of battle casualties, and even mountain heights. Mount Tabor, for example, tops 30 stadia, or 18,200 feet in Josephus, when in fact it is only 1,920. Exaggeration was so common among most ancient sources that Herodotus could claim that Xerxes of Persia invaded Greece with a force number of 5,283,220. Josephus may have felt it wise to provide accurate statistics if such inflation was common fare at that time. Numbers are a problem also in Josephus's sources, including the Old Testament, and they may have been enlarged additionally during scribal transmission of manuscripts. That Josephus also had a lofty opinion of himself has already been noted, and his various heroic exploits were doubtless embroidered to enhance his image. At times, he is inconsistent in statements made in the Jewish War when compared with those in antiquities. Even in many of those in these may be understood as corrections in the latter writings on the bias of better knowledge. The discrepancies between the Jewish War and his Vita, however, are more serious. They include irreconcilable versions of a brutal incident involving Josephus's activities at Tyrrhaki, Magdala, in Galilee, when enemies tried to attack him in his lodging. The accounts of his escape not only strain credibility, but show a streak in his character that is more cruel than crafty. Josephus also shows credulity, Salaki, and reporting that a ball fired from a Roman ballista hit hit a pregnant woman in Jerusalem, tearing a fetus out of her womb and projecting it 100 yards. Like, come on. Like, you see what I'm saying? Right? Like, this man's saying that he's seen a ball come from a Roman cannon and hit a pregnant woman in Jerusalem and knock her baby 100 yards out of her womb. That's what he just said. All right, let's continue. Besides such horrors were the presumed portents he reported during Jerusalem's last days. A cow supposedly gave birth to a lamb in the Jerusalem temple. Visions of horses and chariots gave battle in the heavens, and the like. Did Josephus invent the stories, or merely accept popular rumors uncritically? Probably the latter. Contemporary Salake, I'd had to laugh, man. It was just so absurd. All right, continuing on. Contemporary editors would also fault Josephus for his long digressions on peripheral themes, his penchant for interrupting the historical storyline, and his desultory leaps and covering different segments of the past. Why, for example, does he devote 50 pages to the assassination of Caligula and the accession of Claudius and what is supposed to be Jewish history? This very complaint, however, can also redound to Josephus's credit. Those 50 pages offer fascinating detail in Roman history available nowhere else. In behalf of Josephus, it must be recalled that all these defects, conceit, inconsistencies, embellishment, exaggeration, credulity, and desultory digressions were widely shared by ancient historians, few of whom brought critical tools to their craft in any modern sense. Josephus, in fact, was more reliable than most historians of his day. Whenever he is not referring to himself, his material is basically reliable. The Flavian emperors, Roman commanders, and King Herod Agrippa II, who wrote 62 letters to his dearest Josephus, could have challenged Josephus's works were they at any significant variance from the facts. Instead, they warmly commended him, nor would he have exposed himself to the ridicule of contemporary Jewish scholars had he supplied fantasy for wildly accepted facts in his writings. The defects in Josephus's historiography are heavily outbalanced by its merits: detailed reportage, critical skills in sifting his sources for a Gentile audience, leaving final judgment on some supernatural matters to his readers, and above all, presenting a wealth of evidence that would otherwise have been lost. This includes details regarding geography and architecture that time and again are being verified by archaeology, as well as historical and cultural information that is progressively affirmed by current scholarship. Josephus knew how to sustain interest, portray graphically, exemplify with the specific, and unveil the drama, color, and excitement of the biblical era, while avoiding none of the horrors in its history. The influence of Josephus across the 19th century since his death has been profound. Eusebius, the father of church history, quoted him repeatedly and extensively, as did many of the other Greek and Latin patristic writers, including Justin, Irenaeus, Clement, Origen, Tertullian, and Jerome, who saw in his writings copious confirmations of the biblical record. Nor did Josephus's popularity wane in Byzantine and medieval times, when he was regarded as the source for extra-biblical information. At Cluny, for example, the famous monastery that sparked the Cluniac reform in the 10th century, Josephus was specified for Lenten reading during the age of humanism, while scholars like Baronius grumbled at how Josephus dealt so freely with the biblical text. His works were nevertheless a basic in Renaissance libraries, and they have served as source material for modern literature and scholarship in most Western languages ever since. The numerous translations of his writings still stand next to the Bible on many library shelves in homes across the world with quasi-scriptural authority. Quasi-scriptural authority, okay? That's the end of the critique. All right. So next is going to be the Whiston translation. This is just some stuff from translating through the 1600s to the 1700s. We're about to get into it real quick. It's just real brief before we finish up the introduction, and then we'll actually start reading the life of Flavius Josephus. All right, so we're almost done here. All right, family. So the Whiston translation, what is that? Like, what is that all about? Well, we're about to read it and find out. All right, the Whiston translation, part of the introduction, and it reads: this edition of Josephus's works was translated from the Greek original by William Whiston from 1667 to 1752. Whiston graduated from Cambridge University with a degree of Bachelor's of Arts in 1690 and succeeded Isaac Newton as Lucasian professor of mathematics in 1703. Not like any of this matters, right? But we're just getting some of the, I'm just reading everything for y'all, all right? So anyway, after doing much to popularize Newton's theories through lectures and experiments, Whiston turned also to studies in theology and early church history, which led him to Arian, convictions. An essay that he wrote on Arianism in 1710 led to the loss of his professorship at Cambridge, and he lived in London thereafter, lecturing, translating, writing on science and theology, and thriving on controversy. His 5-volume Pro-Arian Primitive Christianity Revived appeared in 1712, but he remained a firm believer in the supernatural and the validity of prophecy. He held membership in the Church of England until 1747, when he became a Baptist in order to avoid hearing the atheism creed recited during worship. The wide-ranging competence of Enlightenment scholars of his day and the classical expertise as well, demonstrated by Whiston himself, who was not only a mathematician, physicist, and theologian, but a linguist as well. His famous translation of Josephus's works appeared in 1737 and has been reprinted some 220 times to be sure. It has the following defects, which is actually kind of a good thing. Like, this guy was kind of into the esoteric, and which is good because he's not cutting any cards out, right? It's good to have that. Even though he's not on the squad, it's good to know that he was somebody who was always seeking the facts, whether or not it was popular or not, which is good to know. The following defects read, and they're numbered. Number 1, scholarship has arrived at better Greek text than the one on which Whiston based his translation. 2, some mistranslations occur, which had to be understood. 3, transliterations. 3, a few of Whiston's footnotes are faulty. 4, Whiston's translations is necessarily locked into 18th century, not contemporary English. 5, the Loeb numbering system of Josephus's text is now standard rather than Whiston's. All right. Continuing. Still, his translation is clearly intelligible and the modern reader, and continues to be quoted, no less as Josephus scholar than G.A. Williamson, for example, cites Whiston regularly in his The World of Josephus, dated 1964. Some necessary corrections have been introduced in this edition, including the Loeb numbering system, which appears in parentheses throughout the book. Most proper names in the text are spelled as they appear in the Bible rather than Josephus's Greek to avoid confusion. The best English translation of Josephus's works today is that of H. John Thackeray, Ralph Marcus, and Louis H. Feldman, and the Loeb Classical Library. But because 9 volumes of the Loeb edition include also the Greek text on the left-hand pages facing their translations on the right, the sets cost about $200 discounted, according this inexpensive Kriegel edition, which has always enjoyed a brisk sale, should continue to do so, and it remains serviceable even to scholars, who can always compare the Whiston text with the Loeb edition. For any who may be intimidated by the great length of Josephus's writings, but might benefit from a careful condensation of his works that preserves major passages involving New Testament personalities and word-for-word translation, the illustrated book Josephus, The Essential Works, Kriegel, 1994 is recommended. Paul L. Meyer, PhD, whatever. All right, and that's the end of the introduction. All right, so we're done with that. Cool. And, not that any of that was necessary, but, I thought it would be kind of interesting just to kind of go through the intro, kind of just throw the context out and set it up. and kind of get some plot before we start reading this. So now we're actually going to begin this book, right? The Life of Flavius Josephus. Well, it's still kind of introduction because we haven't gotten into the Jewish antiquities yet. So we're going to read about the life of Flavius Josephus before we get into the antiquities. This is going to take a little while here, all right? Because there's going to be multiple chapters. Let me see. Yes. Scanning. Sorry. Yeah, because there's a preface that comes before it. We're looking at, see, those are the antiquities. Yeah, we're looking at 76 chapters of the life of Flavius Josephus. So we got some work to do before we get into the antiquities. All right. So thanks for riding along with me on this one, Kingdom Builders, Road Trippers, Akeem and Akai team. All right, it's always a pleasure to have you. Right? Please be safe out there. And I think we're gonna do some more reading here. I want to try to get some more into these scrolls here. But if we don't speak again, then please just be safe until we read the next time. Alright, you already know the drill. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh. Alright, I'll see you all very soon. I love you. Yeah.